good evening, and welcome to the final part of our Blood on the Clock Tower character script ranking series, little trilogy that we totally intended to be a trilogy from the start. This is the third part in a series, in a trilogy, like I just said. So if you're watching this, if you're with us live on Twitch, you're absolutely fine. There won't be a whole lot that you can watch them in any order. But if you are watching this on YouTube, then there will be a playlist in the description where you can go and watch them in order, so you can see what we've given everything here. But if you want to know our thoughts on anything, go back and watch them. The first part was everything up to and not including Legion. The second part is Legion up until everything that we're doing today. We did them alphabetically, so that will help you find the character that you're interested in. But yeah, we're going to finish it off tonight. We've got about 30, 40 characters to go. And I say we because, of course, I have my long-suffering stream partner and mortal enemy here. Hi, Navian.
Hello. I do apologize if you hear a bunch of noise while I am talking. They are doing construction literally right outside my apartment, as in my driveway is blocked.
Yeah. You got home okay? You were a little bit
I parked
longer
on
than
a
intended.
side street and walked across the road to get here, yes.
Yeah, that's... I hope the walk wasn't too bad for you.
No.
That's good.
It wasn't. It was a very nearby side street, but I am not particularly happy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you got to have maintenance done sometimes, but a little bit annoying. But yeah, we're gonna talk about some Blood on the Clock Tower characters. Once again, if you missed the first couple of episodes, they are both on YouTube now, even if you're watching this live on Twitch. And if you are watching this on YouTube, you can watch our future script notes with us live on twitch.tv/AleoFBlack. Okay, let's get started. We're starting with a demon. Oh wait, hardly any characters left at all, in fact. All right, we'll just pass through these. It'll be a short stream today, and then we'll get back to our regular schedule. The Shabaloth. The Shabaloth, I think, is... I should, of course, say, just as a reminder to everybody who did not catch either of the first two, we are judging these characters not by how much we like them or by how strong we think they are, but by how good they are for script builders. So that's how easily they fit into just any script that you build, and how easy it is to build an interesting script that has that character on it. And the Shabaloth is a tough one right out the gate. The Shabaloth is a character that you are going to need to do a lot of work to get to work on your script. I think. I think it's one that's quite hard to lift out of D tier. But if you've got an argument for C, I'd like to hear it. But for me, this one is landing squarely in D.
So I think that, generally speaking, with a Shabaloth, you kind of want at least some amount of additional Night Death reasons that aren't just the Shabaloth. It's pretty difficult to have a professor without a Shab, but you can have a Shab without a professor. For me, it sits in C tier. Like, I don't think it's nearly as difficult as, say, a professor.
Okay. So I will say that it's definitely easier than a professor, for sure. I suppose the thing that kind of works for it in its favor is that it's a rare source of reliable multi-kills.
Yeah.
So that does make it a useful thing to be able to rely on as a storyteller.
Yeah, it makes the good rolls that can cause an extra death in the night, like a gambler or a gossip, it makes those easier to like work into a script, right? So I kind of think that it tends to fall in that same area in the C tier for those.
Yeah, you sold it to me. The Shabaloth is C tier for script builders. How do you feel about the Slayer?
So the Slayer's pretty powerful. That's why it's a once per game. You know, like if you look at what's on its home script, it does have Recluse and Scarlet Woman that can sort of like uh, throw a little bit of like suspicion into exactly what happened there when the Slayer manages to kill somebody and the day continues going. So I think it usually plays better with those things, but they're certainly not required. They're much more powerful on scripts where there isn't something like a Scarlet Woman to sort of, you know, be the backup for if the demon actually gets hit. But it's generally not too difficult to fit into a script. Like I don't really think it has any really like negative not reactions, interactions with other characters that I can think of.
How do you feel it plays with all of the different demons? How do you feel it plays with Legion and Riot, where there are multiple copies of it?
So I think it's okay with Riot because with Riot there's still the same amount of like normal evil players, even though they're all demons. So I think it's fine with Riot. I don't particularly like it with Legion just because it's, you know, a fish in a barrel situation. It's very, very easy to become quite confirmed as a Slayer and kind of difficult for people to usually sell that, oh, you've hit a Recluse or, oh, you hit the demon, but there's a Scarlet Woman. Like, it makes it difficult to convince people it's not a Legion game. And that's Legion's best bet, is to confuse whether it's a Legion game or not. So it's not the best with those. I don't particularly like it with Zambul because, you know, you kill the player, they die, and then it becomes confirmed Zambul, and then you just know immediately who to double tap because they died to a Slayer. So I think there are some demons that it doesn't work fantastic with, but you know, like they're doable, but not great.
Sure. So the floor of the Slayer for me was always going to be an A with a ceiling of an S. I'm still kind of going between those two. I think you highlight the fact that the Recluse and the Scarlet Woman make it more interesting on Trouble Brewing, but I do think that is in addition to the character rather than kind of like
yeah, they're not necessary.
Right, yeah. I think that the Slayer requires some reason why its ability might not work to really function that isn't just
yeah, I can agree arbitrary with that. There needs to be some kind of like poison or drunkenness on the script so that it's not demon. Just always hard confirmed. Yeah, or a mobile demon.
Mobile demon is particularly good with Slayer, although probably not too mobile because it might feel it might be not the best with little monster as well. But I think Imp and Fangu are really good candidates to put with a Slayer.
Yeah.
So where do you think it lands? Do you think it lands A or do you think it lands S? It's definitely one of those two.
I would put it at a high A or a low S. It's kind of like right in between for me.
It is. I think I'm gonna drop it in A, but it could absolutely be an S tier one. You know what? We're in agreement for this one, but we're in agreement that it could be either. So let's introduce you live chat, Twitch chat, to our first question. What do you reckon? Is the Slayer S tier or is the Slayer A tier? As we also talk about the Snake Charmer. You talk about the Snake Charmer while I make the poll.
So I think there's a few demons that the Snake Charmer doesn't work fantastic with. I also wouldn't put it with Legion for the same reason that Slayer's kind of questionable, except even worse. You know, that's another fish in a barrel kind of situation, and unless there was a poppy grower like that, it's just gonna suck. So wouldn't put it with Legion. It's not amazing with Puka just because there's going to be a no death night that night, and that's going to help substantiate any kind of claim of, well, I was the Puka and look, there was no death last night. That can be mitigated by some amount of like extra death happening on a Puka script, but we're not really looking at those additional interactions exactly. We're looking at Snake Charmer with Puka, which is meh. It kind of works with most other demons. Its home script does have Vigor Mortis, and it's not the best with that. If the Vigor Mortis has already killed their minions, like, you know, you get to start off as a Vigor Mortis that is down minions because they're already dead, and it can't even get the benefit of their ability. So being charmed into a Vigor Mortis is not the best for you personally, depending on what the previous demon did. Other than that, I think it works with pretty much any other demon that I can think of. It's pretty interesting with like say a Nodashi, because it means your poisoning has moved around, so that's really fun. Adds extra mobility for a different type of mobility for demons that would otherwise not be mobile. So there's that. I think it's fairly easy to slot into most scripts.
I think depending on the experience level of your players, it either works really well or really badly with Spy and Widow.
That's definitely true.
Like at the peak, it creates mistrust amongst the evil team, and at the worst, it immediately tells a good player who the demon is, which isn't how it's supposed to work.
Right. When you are a Spy or a Widow, if you see a Slayer, or if you see a Snake Charmer on that Grim, you need to not tell your demon that.
Slayer has gone into it too. I think that's also a particular problem if it's Spy or Widow with a little monster, because then there's nothing that you can do. I think that it probably works best with static poison rather than transient poison, in my opinion.
Right.
So I would suggest that you put it on scripts with drunks and leeches, and it's really fun with leech, to be honest. And Nodashi and so on, rather than poisoners and puckers. Pucker's probably okay. We spoke about that. We did speak about that. It's not great. It can work, I think. I don't think it's the end of the world to have a Pucker and Snake Charmer. I think you can have.
I mean, I agree. It's not the end of the world, but it's also not a fantastic interaction either.
It depends on how the rest of the script is built. I think if you can accommodate a Pucker and a Snake Charmer, it might be fine. I think this one is mid to low A, maybe verging into a B. What are you feeling?
I'd put it in A. There's really not a whole lot of like actively negative interactions.
Okay.
It's about the same amount as a Slayer, so.
Okay, interesting. I think it's a little bit trickier to put a Snake Charmer on a script than a Slayer, but I see the point. The Snitch, we didn't have to discuss that one, so I'll start with the Snitch. I think the Snitch is a very easy character to put onto most scripts. I think that it has a few question marks maybe with characters like the Damsel, but other than that, there's not really a huge issue with it. It might not do anything if you've got like a Spy and a Widow, or a Spy or a Widow in a huge game. So maybe don't look at not putting them on, but even then you have to account for the games where you're not going to have a Spy or a Widow. It's fun. It's one of my favorite characters for the Cannibal tweet, because that's just funny. What do you think? I think it's an S tier outsider. Is there anything horrible I'm missing?
No, I agree. I think even with a Spy or a Widow on the script, it's still fine, because it allows your other minions to not have to go and talk to the Spy, right? So like basically, even if there's a Spy who can tell the entire evil team like any bluff that's available, by having a Snitch in a Spy or a Widow game, they don't feel as pressured to do that, right? So they don't have to, on day one, feel that need to get with the entire evil team to pass out bluffs and stuff. The Snitch just gives a lot of breathing room in games where there is no Spy or Widow, and even when there is one, it still gives just like that extra little bit of breathing room, so that people who do things like, say, track whispers, it's not going to give as much away because there's no need for it. So, yeah, I don't think the Snitch Marionette Jinx is a bit weird. The previous one was a bit weird. I expect we'll see more changes to that Jinx coming in the future, probably. Yeah. So that's the only thing really that's weird with Snitch is the Marionette, but it's not weird enough for me to drop it down. I think it's very easy to put into anything.
How do you feel about Snitch with minions that are also the demons? So let's say Legion and Riot again.
I have no problem with that.
Sure. I also don't. it's just one of the interesting things, I guess. Um, okay, let's talk about the soldier. The soldier is a character that is safe from the demon, and that has a lot of interesting interactions when you look at various other abilities that the demon might have. Um, it's not the best with a Leviathan, and I don't think unless your script is really built around it, it's probably not the best with Riot either. Al-Had it's also quite weak with, but other demons it can be really interesting at times.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think that when you do have something like an Odashi, you do have to be careful with other things on the script, like a mathematician, because it might actually help track it a little bit too much. But otherwise, yeah, I think Soldier is pretty easy to fit onto most scripts.
Sure. Where'd you put the soldier?
I'd probably put it in A tier.
A tier is what's keeping it out of S in your opinion?
Just the fact that like it doesn't really work at all with demons that don't kill at night, like Riot or Leviathan.
Yeah.
I think that there are jinxes there, but like I don't like those jinxes. I think they're bad.
I do like, it's not the best. I do like putting Soldier with Monk because I think that they kind of score different points on the two axes that we like to look at. I think that the Soldier can probably go on more scripts than the Monk can, but the Monk can do more things on any given script than the Soldier can and highlight other characters better.
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate.
So, yeah, Monk and Soldier, best buds forever. All right, what are we going to do with the Spirit of
Ivory? So I think that the Spirit of Ivory should go in not applicable.
Do you?
Yes.
Talk me through that, because the Spirit of Ivory is a fable that you will want to consider as a script builder.
Yes, but I don't think it's intended that you write scripts around the Spirit of Ivory. It is meant to be a tool for if you have written a script that has. So, okay, there's different applications of it, and I have some strong opinions on what is really a positive interaction or a positive use of it and negative use. I think that if you have multiple alignment changers on your script, if you just throw on like a whole bunch of alignment changers and then you toss on a Spirit of Ivory, I think that often feels bad for your players because if you put in more than one alignment changer at a time, you are literally having a player whose ability can be completely negated. And I think that doesn't feel very good for that player, right? Whereas a more positive use of it is if you have one alignment changer on your script, it doesn't matter which one, you just got one, but you also have things that can change somebody's character, like say a barber or a pit hag. You want to throw on that Spirit of Ivory because the intention there is that your script will still have the chaos of characters changing and people moving around and different things happening, but the intention is not to have multiple evil players coming out of those interactions, right? So I think that for me, there's very clear positive and negative uses of it. But regardless, the intent of it is to always act as a tool for the script to prevent that sort of unbalanced situation of having way too many evil players in the game. Whereas, like you shouldn't really be going out of your way to write a script that is about that, if you ask me.
So, here's my question then, because I do think this should be rated. How do we differentiate Spirit of Ivory and put that in an A? And differentiate that from the Sentinel, which kind of does the same sort of thing, in my opinion.
So, yeah, okay. The Sentinel is filling in a gap of outsider manipulation, which is, I think, something that every script has a need for, whereas alignment changers is not something that every script has a need for. So, for me, that's the differentiation.
I would say that the Spirit of Ivory provides a lack of alignment changing rather than alignment changing, and I think that scripts do have a need for not too much alignment changing.
I agree, but I think you can just design the script better around that. Whereas with our outsider manipulation is very, very, very limited. If we had way more outsider manipulation characters, maybe I wouldn't have rated Sentinel at all. Maybe it would have been an NA. But the reality is that we don't have a whole lot.
Okay, I'm going to throw this one over the chat as well. Do you think that the Spirit of Ivory should be rated at all? And if so, where would you put it? And while I do that, how do you feel about the Spy?
Yeah, the Spy can go pretty much anywhere. Does it have any negative interactions? Like, I really can't think of any.
So the Spy has a lot of jinxes, or a good number of jinxes that say either these two characters can't be in play together, or in the case of the Alchemist cannot have the Spy's ability. So I think you need to be.
Yeah, that's true.
So some of those interactions can absolutely be interesting ones in their own right, but you also need to be careful that you don't overload your script with them. Like, you don't want to have a script where you've got a Spy and also a Heretic and also a Damsel and also all of these other characters that the Spy can't coexist with.
I would point out that the thing about the Alchemist, that's the Alchemist's problem, not the Spy's.
Right, but you also the Spy. My point is that the Spy can reduce a storyteller's flexibility in the setup phase.
Yeah, I can agree to that.
It's never below an A. I do think it's probably, at the very least, high A, maybe low S. Do you think it's S tier? I think the Spy can also. I was going to say something, but then I realized that I was getting into how it plays the character rather than how it is as a script for script building. So, do you feel like it's A or do you feel like it's S?
Okay, so what does it have hard jinxes with? That's Damsel and Heretic.
Sure.
Is that it?
I am not sure, to be perfectly honest with you offhand. It might be.
So the thing about those hard jinxes is that most hard jinxes are like, well, these two don't interact in any kind of interesting way, so just keep them off of the script together. The thing about Damsel or Heretic is that you explicitly know something about the game state as a good player, but you also can't say that, because if you say why, then the evil team is going to know something that they shouldn't, and you're going to lose the game. So sure. I actually think in this instance, these hard jinxes actually create a very interesting, intense scenario for the good team, as opposed to most hard jinxes, which are just like, blech, keep them away. So for me, those particular jinxes don't really negate a whole lot of the Spy's utility.
I do agree that those jinxes can be interesting and are interesting. The only concern that I have is, from a script building perspective, can you make this script and have enough legal setups in the two outside the game? You probably can. Yeah,
I do agree that is something that you need to be careful of. Like, I would probably only have one of those on a script with a Spy and not both, because at that point you're really going to be limiting yourself as a storyteller with regards to the stuff. So you do have to be a little bit careful with that.
That's fair enough. There's 1 minute left of our Spirit of Ivory poll. Let's talk about the Steward for a second. The Steward, I think, is the easier of the two most recent characters to script build with. Compared to the Knight, and we gave the Knight A tier. Can the Steward go any? Does the Steward have anything horrible that it does? And does the Steward have anything? Does it make any other characters better? I think no to both of those, and I think it's A tier. I think you can absolutely put the Steward in any script, so on that grounds it's S tier. But I don't think the Steward really brings out the best in any other characters.
I mean, I still think it's S tier, even if it's a low S. Like, it can literally go in any script. I think how bland or boring somebody might find it is going to be, that opinion is going to vary from person to person. but the reality is it can go into any script, and you probably want some sort of drunkenness or poisoning or misinformation on any script, but it goes a little bit better if it has some of that can happen during that first night, right? Beyond that, I don't have any negatives about it.
Yeah, I don't have any negatives.
Less.
I don't have any negatives, but my question is, what character does it have an interesting interaction with? What character does the steward make better? I feel like all of the other characters that we've got in S tier make another character better in some way.
I mean, what about Spy? Spy with a demon where or Spy on a script where there's some mobility, right? And the Spy could become the demon.
I don't know how much I like that, to be perfectly honest. I think that the steward should be seeing good players, unless they are poison. I know that that's the Spy's ability to mess with that, but I feel like the steward is weak enough as it is, although of course it knows that there's a spy on the script, it might see a spy.
But... I disagree that it's weak.
Okay, well.
I think it might be bland or it might be boring, but I don't think that makes it weak.
Okay, well, I do think it fits on any script. So sure, we'll put it in S tier.
It's a low S, don't get me wrong. I do think that there are other S tier characters that are more interesting or better, but if you can put it on any script, you're going to be hard pressed to get me to put it in anything lower than an S.
Fair enough. The Spirit of Ivory didn't get any votes because I think everybody's watching Patters. Say hi, chat, by the way.
We have 5 years.
Yeah, say hi if you're one of our viewers. We miss you. You're all very quiet tonight. It's very hot where I am, so maybe you're in a subdued, overheating mood. But yeah, it didn't get any votes, so I guess it's not rated. So we'll put it in not applicable. Stormcatcher is another Fable character that you really can build a script around, and often you do. I think the Stormcatcher can catch most good characters that don't want to die in the night or during the day, I guess. The Stormcatcher can catch characters quite nicely. You certainly wouldn't want to put it on most scripts, and I think there are a lot of scripts that it might not be the best on, but those are scripts that obviously aren't built with it in mind. How easy is it to build a Stormcatcher script? I don't know if I've ever actually tried, to be perfectly honest. I've played Trouble Brewing with a Stormcatcher. Works great. It's the only base script I play with a Stormcatcher. I think it sits next to its Sentinel friend in B tier. I think that you can absolutely do interesting things with a Stormcatcher, and I think you could probably fairly easily build a script with one, but like I say, I've never tried, so I don't really know. What do you think?
I'd probably put it more in A tier, just because I think that Sentinel has a very, very specific thing that it needs to be doing, and therefore can't just be thrown on any script, whereas Stormcatcher is much easier to sort of kind of put anywhere you want, really. But I agree that there's definitely some roles that it's going to have significantly more interesting interactions with than it would others. Influx here saying it's funny when Ben made the Gambler Stormcaught recently. That's funny, sure, but that's not very good for the Gambler. Any role that actually wants to die in the night is not good with Stormcatcher. So I think that's what bumps it down from S tier for me, is that there are some roles that distinctly you wouldn't really want this Stormcatcher to catch, but it has a little bit more versatility than a Sentinel, say.
Yeah. An A is well above the Doomsayer and the Fibbin. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
I think the Doomsayer and the Fibbin have even more strict sort of what is it that you're doing with these on a script than a Stormcatcher.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. I'll put it in A without argument. I think, like I said, I think you can absolutely fairly easily build a Stormcatcher script, and you can, even if there are some characters on your script that won't want to be Stormcaught, you can just pick another one. It's not like it matters if your players meta which character you're going to Stormcatch, because you tell them at the start of the game, right?
Right. And also, there are some scripts that exist where Stormcatcher is on. It's just sort of like Stormcatch whatever you feel like.
Yeah.
But most Stormcatcher scripts that I have seen, they do have a specific character that's meant to be Stormcaught every time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. How do you feel about the Sweetheart? Let's talk about the Sweetheart.
Yeah, I think the Sweetheart is pretty versatile. It doesn't necessarily work great with Puka because, you know, getting poison killed, you don't drunk anybody after. As on the same vein, like it's maybe questionable with other poisons that can move around, like say a Poisoner specifically, because if you poison kill them, you know, if they bluff successfully that they're a powerful role and you poison kill them, well, that sucks. So I think you have to be a little bit wary of kind of like where the drunkenness or poisoning is coming from on your script when you put it on. But otherwise, it's a fairly versatile outsider.
Yeah, I think it's quite a versatile outsider, absolutely. And I think that it's quite easy to build a script where it does a lot of interesting things. Is it good on every script? No, definitely not. There's plenty of scripts where you might prefer a puzzle master or a drunk, but I feel like those three characters.
Yeah, I agree.
There aren't many scripts where I don't at least consider one of those three characters. Strongly
yeah,
consider.
Same.
So I think it's an A-tier character.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's talk about the Tea Lady. I think the Tea Lady is one of the hardest survive execution characters to build a script around. The ceiling that we've put for characters that cause other characters to survive execution is B tier. We've not got any above that. I don't think that it's D tier. I think there are enough interesting things that you can do with it. It plays really nicely with the barista, of course. Sorry, not the barista, the matron, of course. It's an interesting bluff for a DA if you've got enough things that the DA can do with it. I did very recently build a script where the Tea Lady was the only character that allows you to survive execution. It didn't get run. It was a Leviathan script, so it did come with a huge cost. But generally speaking, you probably don't want to do that. Needs to have that cover. So I think it's C tier. What do you think?
Yeah, I can agree with that. I don't think it's the worst or most difficult to write a script around, but I do think that you have to be very careful about, what other sources of surviving execution on the script are, or, what costs that comes with. So I can agree that it's a C tier.
All right. Let's talk about the Tinker then. Thoughts?
Funniest character in all of Clock Tower.
Of course.
So in terms of script building, though, it is technically very easy to slot onto any script, but in terms of like actual utility of it, you're going to want to put it on a script that has night death manipulation on it. Either reasons for players to not die or reasons for players to die due to other abilities, like extra night deaths to happen. Because without that, then when or why would you ever trigger the Tinker, right? Like, you don't want to have an outsider that's literally doing nothing because you're like, well, I could kill it, but it just confirms the Tinker.
Extra day deaths, put it on a script with a Slayer, a Witch, or a Golem.
Yeah, it is funny with those, in my opinion.
Obviously, with a Slayer, it also needs a Scarlet Woman, so you're constricting the utility a little bit there.
Yeah.
But where are we going to put it? I mean, you summed up the Tinker really nicely. It's such a fun character, but you probably want to have characters, like you say, that cause extra night deaths that it can interact with in an interesting way. But there are plenty of ways that you can do that. You could even, the absolute funniest option is to put it on a script with a psychopath and just wait for everybody who isn't the psychopath to claim psychopath and pick each other and see who gets unlucky and picks the Tinker first.
Right. Yeah.
You can also put it on a script with the only other extra death being, you probably don't want to. You probably want to have another character that can cause an extra death, but you can also put it on a script with a Godfather without intending to hide that it's a tinker, but just be like, "Hey, Godfather, have an extra kill tonight," or
Right, yeah.
or better yet, "Hey, Town, I'm telling you, there's a Godfather in the game. Do you believe me?" Although if you want to do it that second way, you probably want to have a bunch of reasons why the Godfather surprise didn't kill. So, is it B tier?
I'd probably put it in like a high B, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's mid B, but I think it's
B. Yeah, I could see mid B. That's also fair.
The Town Crier is a character that does exactly one thing and does it reasonably well. It's your minion finder. You're going to have minions on almost every game you play, or at least characters that register as minions. So probably don't put it with Riot. It isn't really going to do a whole lot unless you have a very, very conservative group. It's I think it's interesting with every other demon. It has it can be a real Legion finder, but without being a hard Legion finder. It can help you track down the demon in a little monster game, and obviously it can help you find potential demon candidates in an imp game or a Scarlet Woman game. And it's a good character to have if you think the evil team might face pressure in numbers, like if you've got a couple of reasons for people to change alignment and no Spirit of Ivory. So, all that said, is there anything that the Town Crier maybe isn't the best with? I think it's not the best with minions that are public and that can just go, fuck absolutely. You, Town Crier, I'm nominating every day, you don't get any ability. So, I think it's A tier.
I agree, and I agree that that's what makes it A tier as well. Like, at this point, we're getting more and more kind of very loud and public minions, right? Like, a goblin is probably always happy to sort of fuck with a Town Crier, a psychopath, a vizier. You know, there's a lot of roles now that are just completely happy to, like, ruin a Town Crier. And I think that that's not particularly fun to pair them with, so I'd also put it in A tier.
You have built a significantly more teensy builds than me. I think I've built like 2. So talk to me about the Toymaker.
I wouldn't say significantly more. I've built like 3.
Okay, well you built 1 more than me.
So Toymaker is...
Have you ever built a script with Toymaker?
No, I haven't, no? Okay. And I'm not sure how I feel about it as a result, because I've not really played with it much either, so I don't have a very good feel for like what it is the Toymaker is really meant to be doing in a game or on a script as a result. You know, its ability is that in a teensy build, the evil team gets normal starting information, so they get to know who each other are, and the demon will still will get bluffs.
Sure.
So it's useful for, in particularly, like if you have newer players, like your entire group is just newer players and you weren't able to get enough for a full-size game. I think that's where running a Toymaker is useful.
So does that then make this more of a storyteller tool than a character?
I'm not sure, to be honest. So the counter to the fact that evil gets to know each other is that they also have to give up a kill. Like, they literally aren't allowed to win the game unless they give up a kill.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Like, I've just never really played with it, and I've never designed a script with a Toymaker intended in mind. So, I feel like it's not applicable, and it's more of a storyteller tool to be used in any particular teensy build, depending on like the experience level of your players. But I'm not really that sure.
Yeah, I also feel like it's a storyteller tool for not just experience, but also, do you just want to play a slightly more normal game of Clock Tower for something that you're more used to? And like, Toymaker might be for some groups a character that turns a Teentsyville into not a Teentsyville anymore if that group doesn't like Teentsyvilles, which I'm told there are people who don't.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that this is a character that we can't really discuss. But we can absolutely talk about the Undertaker. I think that this is a tricky one to place. So I think that you can make solid arguments for that it does a lot. There are a lot of characters that it can interact with. I mean, it can interact with any character because they can see what they are, except perhaps in most cases a Boom Dandy or a Goblin or a Saint. It's probably not going to interact with them very much. I think that the threat of an Undertaker on a script is something that the evil team have to play around. And I think that an Undertaker can be one of, and I think the other thing that's holding it back, if anything is holding it back from being like a really high tier, I think that it's the fact that the Undertaker can be too strong for the good team. So I think that it has the Dreamer setback. If there's no way for the evil team to bluff it, and if there's no way for the evil team to mess with it, or to deal with it, then the Undertaker is a character that can be tricky to put on the script. I think it's better than the Dreamer. I think it's easier to put on the script than the Dreamer. So I do think it's high B, low A. Where do you put it?
Yeah, I think I can agree that it's a little easier to fit onto most scripts than a Dreamer is. Although a Dreamer does have its own sort of built-in kind of like misinformation, right? Because it gets two pieces of info, whereas an Undertaker just gets one. But I still, for some reason, think that not only do I think it's a little bit easier to fit onto scripts, I also think that it incentivizes the good team to execute, which a Dreamer does not necessarily do.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that that's a useful thing for scripts to have. It's not 100% necessary, but it is useful.
Absolutely. I think that it's not really a coincidence that all three of the base scripts have that, right? Trouble Brewing has the Undertaker, Sex and Violets has the Vortox, and BMR has everything.
Everything.
So it's one of the few characters that does that without being a survives execution character. So does that push it up into an A tier? I think it also has more interactions with other characters than Dreamer does. Like Dreamer, they both interact with Spy and Recluse, but I prefer the Undertaker's interaction with Spy and Recluse.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think that the utility that it puts on a script as being like, here's an incentive for players to execute, I do think that pushes it up a little higher than Dreamer for me and would put it into like an A tier.
Yeah. Okay, cool. The Vigor Mortis. I believe that the Vigor Mortis is both of our favorite demons.
It's up there for me.
Do you want to talk about it?
So in terms of scripts building, the Vigor Mortis's big thing is definitely going to be looking at what minions you're putting in play, because of course its ability interacts directly with the minions. There are several minions that I think that it doesn't work fantastic with, like Boom Dandy or Mastermind or Scarlet Woman, anything where as soon as the player is already dead, Goblin, or the demon themselves is dead, that's, looking at the Mastermind, Scarlet Woman type stuff, that minion who has been killed by the Vigor has no utility there. I think it's okay to maybe have one on the script like that, that a Vigor is going to be slightly less incentivized to kill unless they really, really want that poison to happen. But there's enough minions that I think play quite poorly with the Vigor Mortis that I would probably put it into A tier. There's, minions that aren't directly in the category of like, my Vigor Mortis doesn't really like this, tend to work really, really well with the Vigor Mortis.
Yeah, I think that it's A tier. I think A tier is exactly where it lands, so I'll drop it into A tier. But I think that the other thing that you didn't mention is that it is another of the very few outside manipulation characters, and that is a huge thing for script building. So I still think it's A tier. But yeah, I think it's mid A tier. I think it's a perfectly good character that is not too hard to build around and very interesting to build around for sure. The Virgin, I like the Virgin. I have a kind of, it's not a hard rule, but I have a soft rule when script building with the Virgin, which is that it needs to have a reason why both of the players, or why the players who are involved in the Virgin confirmation are not confirmed. and ideally it wants to have multiple reasons why its ability didn't work if a player nominates it, so it becomes bluffable. So I think the version almost needs to be paired with something like a spy or a bounty hunter or a Mezephiles, and I think it needs to be paired with something like a drunk, a poisoner, probably not a no dashi, because that's problematic in its own right. I think it's okay with a pucker because it'll die the next night, but that's pretty easy to simulate because usually when a version gets nominated, then they'll go, oh, but I was the version. Why didn't that happen? And then the evil team can go, okay, well, you weren't poisoned. You were nominated by an evil player, but I'm going to kill you tonight anyway, and then it'll look like you were pucker poisoned. So I think it's okay with pucker, but I do think it does need that poison or drunkenness, and I do think it needs that reason for at least one of the players involved in the quote-unquote confirmation to actually be evil. So I think all of that being said, but some of those are really, really interesting things for the purposes of the script and for the purposes of the game. I think all of those things being said, it lands in the B tier. I think it scales pretty well on both, but not great on either of our axes.
Yeah, I agree that B tier is pretty much exactly where it belongs for those reasons. The fact that you need like these two different points of things taken into consideration of multiple reasons why it would fail, and if either both players are good or one of the players is evil, as well as multiple reasons that, or well, maybe not multiple, but at least one reason on the script why a player is not necessarily hard confirmed in that interaction. Yeah, I think that makes it a B tier.
Yeah. Wonderful. So, how do you feel about the Vizier, our newest minion to the Vizier?
Yeah, it can be pretty strong for sure. I think that in terms of script building, it's kind of like a little bit like Judge, right? Which we put in C tier. And we put it there because it doesn't necessarily play very well with certain roles of forcing an execution through on. So, for example, a goblin or a saint. I don't think those pair particularly well with the Vizier. People have some very strong feelings about like Alchemist Vizier. But that's maybe more of an Alchemist issue than a Vizier one. Not sure, but yeah, I think that there's definitely some restrictions on what other minions you want or what other abilities you want to pair a Vizier on a script with, but they're not too much.
So does this land in C? Because I think C is where I put it. I do think that the Judge is a really good parallel for it. I think that there are some of the jinxes that it has are quite funky and controversial. I personally don't hate the jinx that it has with Preacher and Courtier. I think it's a completely understandable script that kind of gives both teams at least something.
Yeah, I do think those jinxes are a little weird and awkward, and I can definitely understand why some people really don't like them. I'm not sure how I feel about them, to be honest.
I don't think there's a better jinx, though. If you don't want to go, these two characters cannot be in play together, I don't think there's a better alternative than what we've got. But we're not, yeah. For the purposes of things as they are, I do think that is a little bit of a detraction that you don't have to deal with the Judge, and the fact that everybody knows who the Vizier is can cause issues with characters. Obviously, as we said earlier, it's not good with a town crier. But at the same time, I didn't find it that hard to build a Vizier script. I don't think it can go above Organ Grinder, though. But I don't think it should be going too much further below Judge. So I do think that C is where it lands.
Yeah, I'm fine with it being in C. I think that like the amount of characters that it's restricted with are not all that many when you sit and think about it, but the level of like unfunness with those types of restrictions is incredibly high, and so I think C is a good place for it.
Yeah. Okay. The Vortox is a character that only affects information. It's a demon that only affects information. So there is a little bit of a debate about where its strength lies. It's a character with a conditional endgame ability, but that conditional endgame ability is almost never met. You almost never see the Vortox get its special win condition, and that's not really the point. I think it does happen. My first ever SMV game, I won with the Vortox win condition on the first day as the pit hag, and I had no idea what the hell was happening. It was a wild ride. But yeah, I think that there's a little bit of a debate to be had about whether you want to throw all information at the Vortox and be like, okay, your characters, your information characters, they're all going to know it's a Vortox game, and their information is all going to be useless. So all the good team's ability is going to be you start knowing there's a Vortox in play, and anybody who is getting true info, they're probably on the evil team. And that's kind of the line that SMV goes for. There is also another way to build a Vortox script, which is to go, okay, we're going to have a few characters that get information, and their information is going to be pivotal to solving the game, and then all the rest of the characters are going to have powerful abilities. But it's going to be a hell of a lot harder to tell whether it's a Vortox game or not, so you don't know whether you should be trusting those characters. I think that in terms of which information characters pair well with the Vortox, I think you're looking at characters which give not binary info, but also not open-ended info. So a character that can give one of like 3 or 4 answers is perfect. So an empath, most of the characters that it comes with on its home script, obviously, a chambermaid. The Vortox is also a good way to solve a lot of issues that we have with some information characters that would otherwise be too powerful, such as the chambermaid. So I think that the Vortox is a character which can be a good friend for the storyteller. However, when the Vortox goes bad, boy, does it go horrible. It creates some absolute nightmare situations for some characters, like obviously Night Watchman and Poppygar immediately spring to mind if you're going to run them as written, along with the Amnesiac as well. I think, how does that balance out? That is a really tricky question to answer. I do think that the Vortox is... And then, of course, there's the other characters that gain very open-ended info that are just like, okay, so I know that neither of those 2 players are the poisoner. Cool. That tells me basically nothing about the state of the game if you've got a Vortox and an investigator. Obviously, there are ways as a storyteller that you can mitigate that and give false information that is legitimately helpful, but it's still something that you need to be wary of as a script builder. I honestly don't know where I want to put the Vortox. Talk.
I'd put it into A. I mean, I agree with everything that you're saying, that like, you know, there's some kind of very negative interactions like Amni, Poppygrower. I think Balloonist is another one as well, although I think if there was a more standardized way to run it in Vortox, like for example, if you could guarantee that your storyteller in a Vortox game is a Balloonist, is never going to show you the demon, then that's actually still helpful, but you can't guarantee that right now. So, you know, I think that's another highly questionable interaction. So I think there's a few interactions that are just sort of like, man, these are really bad. You probably shouldn't have them on Vortox scripts or in Vortox games because that's just not fun for that player. But otherwise, I think it's actually a really good tool when utilized correctly in script building. So I think it falls into A.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that the Vortox does something that is so unique that absolutely no other character does. And that can be a really powerful script building tool. So yeah, I'll put it in A. I'll agree with that. I will agree. Yeah, for sure. Um, how do you feel about the Voodoo then?
So the Voodoo is its home script is BMR, right? And on BMR, you can have multiple night deaths happening in once, and so you can go with going from like day one where there's maybe only like just the Voodoo who can vote. And then maybe on night two, you've suddenly got 4 people who can vote along with the Voodoo, right? Because the script is just wild with night deaths. I think that the Voodoo is most interesting in that particular scenario where you can have multiple night deaths happening and that can increase the number of dead players very quickly. I think it's better in those situations, but that's not necessarily required. I think it's a very sort of versatile, like you could technically really put this into any game, but what level of interest is there in that particular game is more the question when it comes to Voodoo.
Yeah, I agree with that. Um, I think that the Voodoo is an interesting traveler because it's one of the few evil travelers, like a traveler that you know that they're evil, that you still might not want to exile anyway. Um, so
Right.
the
If you think that more good players are dead than evil players, you might not want to exile that because good has
right,
the advantage.
or you might want to just to kill off an evil player. You have options. The Voodoo opens some interesting plays with certain characters that you might consider to be good for the game. You might consider them to be bad for the game. So let's. How do you feel about the play that you might see um, in BMR, where let's just make up an example game. The evil Voodoo executes the demon on the first day. Um, the assassin assassinates themselves at night, and then there are 3 evil and the gossips correctly, and a good player dies. And then there are 3 evil players who can vote, and 1 good player who can vote, and they just kill a random good player, and they get a day 2 mastermind win. That good could probably the only thing that good could have done about was kick the Voodoo out, and then but like you don't want to do that on the second day. That just doesn't feel fun for a traveler. So there are some things that the Voodoo can do like that maybe don't feel great that you want to be careful of when you script building. How do you feel about that sort of thing that Voodoo can open up with having only evil players able to vote?
I mean, I don't mind it because the option to exile is always there, right? Like, I get that socially it doesn't always feel good to exile somebody very quickly into the game, but if that's the play that evil is going for, then they need to be prepared for the good team to potentially figure out that's what's going on and move for the exile. And I assume, the traveler is evil here, so they're probably in on it. So that traveler needs to be prepared for that as well. If you're not prepared or willing or able to accept that good might figure you out and do the things that they need to do to counterplay that play that you're making, then don't do the play at all. That's more of a social problem within the group if people aren't willing to accept that, like, you might get exiled on day 2 if we go for this risky play and good figures it out.
But also
So I
just
don't personally have a problem with it.
but also just the existence of plays like that can just take the game by surprise. And everyone's like, oh well, I guess that was technically a game.
I mean, sure, but if people were going for that play anyway, like, yeah, having the Voodoo and making sure that it's a large majority evil voting there, like, helps ensure that it can happen. But even if the Voodoo weren't there, if good is that unawares that it is a mastermind day, they're probably gonna execute a good player anyway. Like, they would have executed most likely the same good player.
Maybe, yeah. Are there any other things that the Voodoo can work can have that sort of thing that it can do if the evil team just have all of the voting powers? Are there any other issues that can bring up? Maybe the same sort of issue that we're talking about with Judge, but less severe because obviously if 2 dead players decide that they're going to execute the Saint claim, maybe it's time to get rid of the Voodoo now. Yeah. Um, where does it land? Where do you think it lands? For me, I I think I think it fits into a good number of scripts, or it can fit into a good number of scripts. as any traveler kind of can. But when it becomes interesting is the scripts that you talked about, where you can have a lot of people die quickly, so they have a lot of friends and a lot of people have that voting power, as opposed to the nominating power. So, is it B? What do you think?
I mean, I'd probably put it into A just because I think it's very clearly more interesting with like multiple Night Death scripts, but it's not necessary. Like it's a pretty versatile traveler, technically speaking. It's just not interesting in a lot of those scenarios.
Okay. Yeah, maybe. I'll put it into A. Excuse me. Washerwoman. The Washerwoman, I think, is a character that gives Town a lot of powerful information. The off the bat instinct is to put it in A. Put it with the librarian. Put it with the. I would put the steward in S tier. Does the washerwoman do anything? Is the washerwoman closer to a librarian than the steward? I guess is the question, or is it further down than a librarian? I think that the librarian can get more out of the. Sorry, I think the storyteller can get more out of the librarian's ability because I think the librarian interacts with a lot of outsiders in a more interesting way, in a way that I can't really describe. Particularly with hidden outsiders, townsfolk don't tend to stay hidden. So I think that the most interesting things that a washerwoman can see are characters like a characters that might not want to claim, like a pixie or a raven keeper or something like that. I don't think that's enough of a step back to knock it down a peg. So I think that the washerwoman is A tier for me, having thought about it. But what do you think?
No, I agree with that. I think it's about on par with librarian.
Okay, talk us through the widow.
So the widow's fairly versatile. It has those same hard jinxes as the spy does with, like heretic and damsel. It's a louder minion because it causes a ping, but of course there's always question about, the alignment of the person who saw the ping. Is this just an evil player bluffing? So it's not like it's loud, but it's bluffable loud, not unlike things like a psychopath or a vizier, for example. I think it has a lot of versatility. It's a source of poisoning, which is pretty important for scripts. It's also a source of static poisoning because it doesn't change what player it's on. I think you need you do need to pay attention to like what townsfolk roles you're putting in. You want to create what's known as a target rich environment, right? You want to give the widow some like actual choices that they could make between probably like some powerful start knowing roles are really great to ruin, but some ongoing information roles as well, and maybe some strong once per game roles. Like just get that mix in there so that widows have interesting choices that they can make. How does it play with mechanical abilities though? I feel like the widow is better with information roles rather than just flat mechanical roles, but it sort of depends on the setup, and that might also just be a personal bias as well.
I do think widow's fine with more mechanically focused characters because like if it's a character that's not going to be a particularly juicy target, then the widow can just choose someone else, right? There's usually going to be enough characters that they can just pick someone else. But I think that widow poisoning a slayer or widow poisoning even an innkeeper, if you've got a script that it works with, or just being like, no, I want my other minions to play. I'm going to poison the preacher. I think that there are absolutely reasons to poison the more mechanical abilities.
Yeah.
The widow can also do one interesting play with a goon if they see that there's no good pickers. So be aware of that, but it's also not the end of the world because on the second day, the good team will learn pretty much exactly what probably just happened.
Right, yeah.
Where do you think it lands?
I'd probably put it into A.
Yeah, that's my thought. Okay. The Witch. I think the Witch is a very versatile character. I think that the Witch is pretty easy to put onto most scripts. Um, Even if there's no cover for it, like a Tinker or whatever, it doesn't matter. That's not the point. The Witch is going to be getting kills. It's going to be getting players off the board.
Yeah.
I struggle to put the Witch also. I once ran a game of Golf and Moon Rocks, which is BMR with a Witch and an Alchemist, and I confused the hell out of the Witch because the Witch picked the Fool who nominated, and then the Tinker nominated, so I killed the Tinker, and the Witch was like, "Excuse me, I did pick that player, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." So Witch with characters that can survive death are. I don't know. Do you think that's good, or do you think that's interesting, or do you think that's bad?
I think it's a little bit of good and bad. It's not fun for the witch to have their character, like the person that they curse, not die, but at the same time, it gives them information about the game state.
Right.
And it can hide a witch, and sometimes hiding a witch until you're in like the end game is really strong.
The Fool also, if it's Fool, say, they also think they've still got their second life, and they don't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm struggling to take this out of S tier.
I can take it out of S tier. It doesn't play well with Zambul, and it doesn't play well with Leviathan or other demons that like don't kill at night. But in particular, Leviathan, because like Leviathan's strength is having the most amount of demon candidates alive by the end of the game, and if you have a witch who's taking somebody out every day, that's not very good. It causes a Zambul to not like anytime the witch ability does work, the Zambul ability won't. Like, I don't think that's a particularly fun combo.
That's fair, but is that enough to take it out? Like the Ravenkeeper, for example, we put into S tier with a couple of wonky demon matchups. Are a couple of wonky demon matchups enough to take the Witch out of S tier?
It does for me.
Why? Is there a reason why you think that the Witch is different to the Ravenkeeper there, then?
Because I had a lot less problems with those demon interactions with Ravenkeeper than you did.
I mean, you talked about Leviathan. You had the problem with Leviathan.
Yeah.
We had what other demons did it have issues with the non-picking demons? It can be a little bit not great with, and I had an issue with it with Riot, although obviously you can't have Witch and Riot together. And I don't particularly like it with Pucker. Okay, well, we put that one to chat. We'll put this one to chat as well if we have enough people in chat who want to opine on whether there are a couple of rough matchups with which the Witch definitely does have. You mentioned the Zombull. Do you want to elaborate on why that's a problem since you brought that
up? Well, the Zombull kind of wants there to be some no deaths during the day so that they can actually get to wake up and kill somebody. And anytime a witch goes off, the Zombull's not going to get to do that. A witch can accidentally curse a leech host, as Influx has said.
That's probably only going to happen on the first day, because if it happens on a later day, the evil team should probably be coordinating better, unless it's a Poppy Girl game, but then you're throwing a third character into the mix. And if it's on the first day, you can re-rack. It's unfortunate, but it's one of those things.
Right, but it's not particularly good or fun. And to be honest, I actually think Witch doesn't pair all that great with one of the minions on its own home script of Evil Twin.
That's fair. It's a bit of a rough combo, but I don't know. I think it's S tier, but I'm willing to take it down to A tier if people in chat think that's where it should be. You talked about the Zombull. Let's talk about the Zombull, because I don't think this one's going to cause too many headaches. It's clearly towards the lower end. Where in the lower end is it? Is it able to escape the D trap?
I'd put it in D tier.
Yeah, I think it's D tier. I think that the Zomble has too many reliances that are only on its home script.
Mm-hmm.
I think it kind of needs the mastermind, and it needs so much confusion over daytime executions.
Yeah. I think a Zomble obviously benefits from there being both A, extra night death reasons, and B, reasons other than it being a Zomble that there's no death at night.
Yeah.
I think it just needs so much support from the other things on the script that it's quite difficult to put Zomble, like you really can't put it on any script.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the Zomble, it's kind of a poster child for the D tier, unfortunately. It looks like Witch is going to be going into the A tier, which, nice. Which is fair enough. Let's pop that in. And that is the final character that's going into a category. So let's review our characters then. In the S tier, we have the Bone Collector, the Cerenovus, the Damsel, the Deviant, the Drunk, the Farmer, the Fearmonger, the Fisherman, the General, the Imp, the Klutz, the Butler, the Magician, the Matron, the Noble, the Pixie, the Ravenkeeper, the Recluse, the Scapegoat, the Seamstress, Snitch, Spy, and Steward. What do you think that those characters kind of have in common, if anything?
Sorry, what?
The characters that we put into S tier there, they're all characters that will fit basically anywhere. How do you feel like a script which is made, which has all of these characters on it would do? Because you've actually got a decent mix of minions, townsfolk, outsiders, and demons and travelers there. You could build the basis of a script around that. How do you feel like a script with those characters would play?
I mean, like, I probably wouldn't want to put Ravenkeeper Farmer on the same script together. Like, you technically can, but like, I personally wouldn't.
Sure.
I think that might be about the only thing that I think like directly conflicts in a way. Well, not conflicts, but like overlaps in a way that I wouldn't want to have them on the same script. Otherwise, I think that's a pretty solid basis for a script. Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll take the opportunity tomorrow and write that script and make a couple of changes if necessary, but maybe we won't need to, and then see how it plays on stream, either tomorrow or on Sunday. We will see. Our A tier characters are the Apprentice, Amnesiac, the Artist, the Barber, Baron, Beggar, the Bishop, the Boom Dandy, the Bureaucrat, the Thief, the Butcher, Chef, the Evil Twin, Fangu, Fortune Teller, Goblin, Gangster, Gunslinger, Juggler, Knight, Librarian, Lunatic, Marionette, Monk, Mutant, Oracle, Poe, Poisoner, Puzzle Master, Saint, Savant, Scarlet Woman, Slayer, Snake Charmer, Soldier, Stormcatcher, Sweetheart, Towncrier, Undertaker, Vigor Mortis, Vortox, the Voodon, the Washerwoman, the Widow, and the Witch. Anything that you would change about that? That is by far our largest, well, not by far, but by a notable margin, our largest category. Do you think there are any of those that you would, in hindsight, want to bump up into S tier or bump down into B tier?
No, I don't think so.
No. Well, we have 3 categories left, but as I said, that was the largest one. So we'll quickly run through B tier, which is the assassin, barista, bounty hunter, cannibal, devil's advocate, dreamer, empath, flower girl, fool, gambler, godfather, harlot, innkeeper, legion, lil monster, mathematician, mayor, Mezephiles, night watchman, Nodashi, philosopher, pit hag, politician, poppy grower, preacher, hooker, psychopath, sentinel, tinker, and the virgin. This is the tier where we're starting to get into characters that really need to be on a very particular script to work, but can make that script really interesting. I think the most notable thing about B tier is this is where we're getting our best survive execution and cause extra night death characters.
Yeah.
We have our C tier, which contains the Alchemist, the Al-Hadikia, the Atheist, Balloonist, Clockmaker, King, Choirboy, Doomsayer, Exorcist, Fibbin, Golem, Goon, Gossip, Grandmother, Heretic, Investigator, Judge, Leviathan, Leech, Moonchild, Monkey, Pacifist, Sage, Sailor, Shavaloth, Tea Lady, and Vizier. These are the characters that you really need to be careful when you're building a script with. You need to make sure that you aren't going to really blow things up and have unfun combinations. These are the characters that have, generally speaking, have at least one seriously problematic interaction that you need to be very well aware of. Or they just do something that a B tier character does, but not as well.
Yeah, also cult leader, not choir boy, as
Sorry.
Ludicolo has said.
Did I say cult? Did I say choir boy? I don't know. It's because I said king first, isn't it? I said king, and then I got cult leader, and those two characters sound too similar. And I started saying, and just naturally flowed into choir boy. So yeah, cult leader, not choir boy. Choir boy is in our BMR tier. I mean, our D tier. Acrobat, chambermaid, cult leader, no, choir boy, courtier, huntsman, fucking
Duchess,
thank you, engineer, lycanthrope, mastermind, minstrel, professor, riot, and the Zombool. These are your characters that you need to be. These are your characters that have very, very, very specific needs, and quite often actually need each other, like Zombool and Mastermind, and kind of Minstrel as well in that branch. But these are characters that either break with most characters or strongly require other characters. I think is what we're seeing at this tier.
Yeah.
And then we have the characters with the fabled characters, which you probably shouldn't really be considering at the script building stage, except for I guess Spirit of Ivory and maybe Toymaker, and also obviously Jin. In the Angel, Buddhist, Jin, Fiddler, Hell's Librarian, Revolutionary, Spirit of Ivory, and Toymaker. And then we finish off with the Deus Ex Fiasco, and that character doesn't exist anymore. So, how do you feel about that tier list that we've done?
Yeah, I think that it is pretty solid.
It's been a commitment of a few hours, but it's been interesting to talk to you about how you feel about all of these characters. I think there were definitely places where we didn't agree, but I think it says a lot that for 95% of these characters, 95%, we're in agreement about where they go, and for all but maybe one or two, we're just one tier apart at most. So I think that this is perhaps not a perfect list. Perhaps your list might vary slightly, and I'm sure it will. But I think that you and I do come at the game with some similar but quite distinct positions. So for us to come up with two or one fairly similar list, I think that there is definitely some value for prospective script builders in looking at this this list here. If you're not sure what to take, see which of these S or A tier characters really fit in nicely. What do you think there's something else that people can take from this conversation that we've had?
I mean, mostly what I hope people take away from it is just a little bit more information and thoughtfulness about the combinations of roles that you're putting on the script, and what actually works interestingly with something else, and what types of support does this character need, or what types of counterplay needs to be available for either team for this particular role.
Absolutely. So yeah, feel free to go and check all of any of our given characters that we've spoken about. like I said, if you're watching this on YouTube, there will be a playlist in the description. If you're watching it in the first hour or so, I might not have put it up yet because I won't have made the playlist yet. But it should be there. And Flying Ludicolo very helpfully, without being asked, always puts time codes to all the various segments. You absolutely don't have to do that, by the way. People can hop around. These are in alphabetical order, but there may well be that in there. If there's not, just find the character that you're interested in. It won't be too hard. But a huge thank you to Flying Ludicolo, who has done that for our 5-hour long videos, which is absolutely incredible. So yeah, we are going to run a couple of games of Blood on the Clocktower tomorrow. Nadian and I are. So do make sure to join us for that. That when I say tomorrow, I mean every Tuesday. In theory, we also have games on Sundays, so check them out. Those games are at 8 o'clock in Central Europe, 9 o'clock in the UK, and 2 o'clock on the East Coast, and half an hour later than those times on Sundays.
I think you said 9 o'clock UK, but I think you meant 7.
I did mean 7. The time goes the other way.
Yeah, time goes the other way.
Time goes the other way. That is your quote of the stream. I'm ill, in case you can't tell. But yeah, thank you for watching. Is there anything else that you think we need to talk about while we're just talking about the tier list, Nadine?
Not that I can think of.
Well, I will actually give you a little bit of a peek ahead. But this is particularly for people who are watching this live on Twitch right now. We're going to have another script competition, which will be based on the image that you can see in front of you. We're not going to give you the exact details until next Tuesday stream. When are you going to be with me next Tuesday, Nadine?
Yeah, okay. I'm pretty sure I should be available for all Tuesdays.
Okay, awesome. In which case, we're going to talk about. We're going to reveal exactly what the criteria are next Tuesday. We will probably both have written a script for it because we usually do. But it will be based on this image, and it'll be based on trying to get you to write a good script using some of the characters that are a little bit trickier to put into scripts. But also, hopefully, you won't all just write BMR. We're going to have a few more things that we're going to do with it that we still need to agree on. We've had a couple of proposals, one of which was a proposal of mine that was absolutely ridiculous. We don't need to worry about that. We're not going to do that. But yeah, tune in next Tuesday to see exactly what we're going to be doing with that. And to be clear, that is going to be Tuesday what date is that going to be? That is going to be the 14th. So not tomorrow, if you're watching this live, but the 14th of June. And I think that is the end of this trilogy. And I
think you mean the 20th of June.
Do I mean the 20th of June?
I don't know why you're saying the 14th. Today's the 12th.
It's because my clock isn't in the format that I'm comfortable with. I run my clock. Yeah, for some reason my laptop's put it in US dating format, and that's confused the hell out of me. I think it's the 6th of December, apparently. I'm going to go before I say anything else that's embarrassing.
Okay.
So thank you, Nadian, for this 3-week voyage into character discussion.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody who's tuned in.
Absolutely. Ludi, you absolutely don't need to, but thank you. We will see you tomorrow when we'll be running a script that I've written, which is a solo Little Monster script, so that'll be fun. And maybe I'll put together another script involving all of the S tier characters on here, or at least most of the S tier characters on here. We'll see. But before we go, Nadian, where can people find you?
You can find me here every other Monday and on Tuesdays, and you can also find me on Connecticut Blood on the Clock Tower on Fridays.
And you absolutely should be. What time on Fridays?
That would be 8 p.m. Eastern.
Which would be 1 o'clock in the morning in the UK and 2 o'clock in the morning in Central Europe, which is why I'm never there. But yeah, make sure that if you are not in Central Europe, to check that out. Or if you are in Central Europe, I'm not your boss. But yeah, everybody have a great week or have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Bye.